International Harvester built some of the most iconic tractors in American agricultural history. But not every machine that wore the IH badge was safe. Today, we're counting down the 12 most dangerous International Harvester tractors ever made. Machines that combined power, innovation, and design flaws that turned routine farm work into life-threatening situations. These weren't bad tractors in every way. Many were revolutionary, powerful, and beloved by the farmers who operated them. But each one carried risks that led to accidents, injuries, and hard lessons about what happens when engineering ambition runs ahead of operator safety. Number 12, International Harvester 2+2 Series. The 2+2 series represented International Harvester's bold attempt to compete in the articulated four-wheel drive market during the late 1970s. These machines delivered between 150 and 170 horsepower through a unique articulated design that bent in the middle for maneuverability. The concept was sound, but the execution created a tractor with visibility problems and stability issues that made it dangerous in ways conventional tractors weren't. International Harvester introduced the 2+2 series in 1978, during a period when American agriculture was embracing larger equipment and four-wheel drive tractors that could handle increasingly demanding workloads. The articulated design used two separate chassis sections connected by a pivot joint, allowing the front and rear sections to bend relative to each other during turns. This configuration theoretically provided better traction than conventional tractors and tighter turning radius than rigid-frame four-wheel drives. But the 2+2's articulation joint created serious visibility problems. The operator sat in the rear section, looking forward over the front section that extended ahead. During turns, the front section angled away from the operator's line of sight, creating massive blind spots where implements, obstacles, or workers could disappear completely from view. The articulated joint itself blocked visibility to the sides, compounding the problem. The 2+2 also suffered from stability issues on slopes. The articulation joint that provided maneuverability on level ground became a liability on hillsides. The front and rear sections could angle relative to each other in ways that shifted the tractor's center of gravity unpredictably. Operators working on side slopes reported feeling the tractor become unstable as the articulation joint allowed the front section to angle downhill while the rear section remained relatively level. International Harvester struggled to make the 2+2 series commercially successful. Farmers who purchased the tractors often traded them away after discovering the visibility and stability problems made them difficult to operate safely. The series was discontinued in 1981 after just 3 years of production, a commercial failure that demonstrated the challenges of articulated tractor design. Number 11, Farmall Cub. The Farmall Cub occupied the opposite end of the size spectrum from the massive 2+2 series. This diminutive tractor, produced from 1947 through 1979, delivered just 9 to 10 horsepower from a small 4-cylinder gasoline engine. The Cub was designed for small farms, market gardens, and light agricultural work, where larger tractors were unnecessary and inefficient. The Cub's small size made it accessible and affordable, but it also created dangerous instability when operators attached implements or carried loads. The tractor weighed approximately 1,500 pounds, light enough that adding weight through implements or attachments could dramatically shift the center of gravity and create tipping hazards. Farmers who used Cubs for loader work discovered the tractor's limitations quickly and sometimes painfully. A front-end loader filled with even a modest amount of material could lift the rear wheels off the ground, eliminating steering control and creating a situation where the tractor balanced precariously on its front wheels. Any movement of the load or shift in terrain could cause the tractor to tip forward, potentially trapping the operator. The Cub's narrow wheelbase and short length provided maneuverability in tight spaces, but offered minimal resistance to tipping forces. Operating on slopes with implements attached created situations where the Cub could tip sideways with little warning. The small tires provided limited traction and stability compared to larger tractors with wider stances. The Cub's high center of gravity relative to its wheelbase created a tipping point that was easily reached when working on even modest inclines or uneven terrain. Operators who attached rear-mounted implements like cultivators or plows found that the additional weight shifted the tractor's balance backward, making it prone to rearing up when encountering resistance or obstacles. The tractor's lightweight, while beneficial for fuel economy and minimal soil compaction, meant it lacked the mass needed to resist tipping forces that heavier tractors could absorb without difficulty. Farmers working in orchards or vineyards, where slopes were common and space was limited, experienced the highest rates of Cub tipping accidents, as the terrain demanded precisely the conditions the tractor handled poorly. The Cub's small engine lacked the power reserve to recover from situations where the tractor began to tip, leaving operators with no ability to power out of dangerous positions once tipping began. Women and older farmers who appreciated the Cub's light controls and easy operation were sometimes the most vulnerable to tipping accidents because they lacked the physical strength to jump clear quickly when the tractor began to go over. International Harvester eventually developed wider front axle options for the Cub that improved stability, but many tractors operated for decades with the original narrow configuration that made them particularly vulnerable to tipping. The aftermarket developed ballast boxes and wheel weights specifically for the Cub, reflecting widespread recognition among users that the tractor needed additional stability measures to operate safely with implements. Despite its limitations, the Cub's affordability and versatility kept it in production for over 3 decades, during which time countless operators learned through experience, sometimes painful experience, exactly how far they could push the little tractor before it would tip. Despite these limitations, the Cub remained popular for decades because it filled a genuine need for small-scale mechanization. Farmers learned to respect the Cub's limitations and operate within its safe working envelope. But accidents involving tipped Cubs remained common enough to give the little tractor a reputation for being more dangerous than its modest power suggested. Number 10. International Harvester 5488. International Harvester introduced the 5488 in 1981 as a high-horsepower tractor, delivering 187 horsepower from a 6-cylinder diesel engine. The 5488 represented IH's attempt to compete in the large tractor market during a period when the agricultural economy was booming and farmers were purchasing the biggest, most powerful equipment available. The 5488 featured complex hydraulic systems designed to operate multiple functions simultaneously and provide precise implement control. But the hydraulic system's complexity created reliability problems that could turn dangerous quickly. The system used multiple control valves, pressure compensating pumps, and sophisticated circuitry that worked well when functioning properly, but failed in ways that compromised operator safety. Sudden hydraulic failure on the 5488 could render implements uncontrollable. A plow raised to transport position could drop without warning when hydraulic pressure failed, driving the plow into the ground and potentially causing the tractor to flip backward. A front-end loader could lose lifting capacity suddenly, dropping loads that might strike the operator or bystanders. Hydraulic steering assist could fail, making the heavy tractor nearly impossible to steer. The 5488 arrived at an unfortunate time in International Harvester's history. The company was struggling financially, quality control was deteriorating, and the resources needed to properly develop and test complex systems weren't available. The 5488 suffered from rushed development and inadequate testing that allowed hydraulic vulnerabilities to reach production. Farmers who purchased 5,488 tractors reported frequent hydraulic problems that required dealer service and created dangerous situations during operation. The tractor's reputation suffered, and many buyers avoided IH entirely, contributing to the company's financial struggles that would eventually lead to bankruptcy and reorganization. Number 9. International Harvester 1586. The 1586, produced from 1976 through 1981, delivered 161 horsepower from a 6-cylinder diesel engine and represented IH's offering in the upper middle horsepower range. The tractor competed against models from John Deere, Case, and other manufacturers in a segment where reliability was crucial because these tractors worked long hours during critical planting and harvest periods. The 1580's transmission became infamous for reliability problems that created dangerous situations. The transmission used a complex arrangement of gears, clutch packs, and hydraulic components designed to provide smooth shifts and multiple speed options. But the design proved vulnerable to failures under the heavy loads and sustained operation that agricultural work demanded. Gear failures in the 1586 could occur without warning during operation. Farmers reported transmissions that suddenly lost engagement, leaving the tractor without power transmission while moving or under load. A transmission failure on a slope meant the tractor could roll backward or forward, depending on terrain, with only the brakes available to prevent runaway movement. The sudden loss of power transmission while pulling heavy implements created situations where the implement's momentum would continue pushing the tractor forward even though the engine could no longer drive the wheels. Operators described hearing grinding or crunching sounds from the transmission moments before complete failure, but these warnings often came too late to allow safe shutdown or positioning on level ground. The 1580's transmission used hydraulically actuated clutch packs that would wear prematurely, causing slippage that operators initially dismissed as minor issues until complete failure occurred during critical work periods. Farmers pulling loaded grain wagons or hay equipment experienced particularly dangerous situations when transmission failures left them unable to control the tractor's movement on even gentle grades. The repair costs for 1,586 transmission failures were substantial, often requiring complete transmission removal and rebuild or replacement that could cost thousands of dollars and leave the tractor out of service for weeks. International harvester dealers reported backlogs of 1,586 tractors awaiting transmission work, with some dealers maintaining stocks of replacement transmissions specifically to address the model's chronic failures. The transmission problems weren't limited to high-hour tractors. Some 1,586 units experienced failures with fewer than 1,000 hours of operation, indicating fundamental design or manufacturing defects rather than normal wear. Farmers who experienced transmission failures during planting or harvest seasons faced devastating financial consequences when their primary tractor was suddenly unavailable during time-critical operations. The 1580s transmission reputation became so poor that used tractor buyers would specifically avoid the model or demand significant price discounts to offset the risk of expensive transmission repairs. International Harvester's inability to resolve the 1586's transmission problems eroded customer loyalty at a critical time when the company was already struggling financially and losing market share to more reliable competitors. Some 1586 transmissions would unexpectedly pop out of gear during heavy pulling, creating situations where the tractor suddenly lost pulling power and the implement being pulled could override the tractor. Other failures involved gears that wouldn't engage when selected, leaving operators unable to select the appropriate gear for conditions. The transmission problems weren't universal. Some 1586 tractors provided reliable service for years, but the failure rate was high enough that the model developed a reputation for unreliability. Dealers reported spending significant time repairing or replacing transmissions under warranty, and farmers who experienced transmission failures often traded their 1,586 tractors for competitors' machines. International Harvester attempted various fixes and running changes throughout the 1580s production run, but the fundamental transmission design remained problematic. The 1586 became a symbol of IH's quality control struggles during the late 1970s, a period when the company's financial problems were affecting product development and manufacturing standards. Number 8. International Harvester 1466. International Harvester introduced the 1466 in 1971, delivering 160 horsepower from a turbocharged 6-cylinder diesel engine. The 1466 represented significant power for the era, competing in a horsepower range where farmers needed capability for large-scale operations but didn't require the massive four-wheel drive articulated tractors that were beginning to appear. The 1460's tremendous power created traction problems that led to dangerous situations. 160 horsepower transmitted through 2 rear wheels often exceeded the available traction, especially in wet conditions, loose soils, or during aggressive implement work. Farmers reported frequent wheel spin that could transition from controlled slippage to violent tire spinning in seconds. When the rear wheels suddenly broke traction and began spinning, the tractor could lurch sideways or forward unpredictably. Operators pulling heavy loads up slopes experienced situations where the tractor's rear wheels would spin, the tractor would lose forward momentum, and the implement being pulled would begin pushing the tractor backward or sideways. The sudden loss of control could result in rollovers or collisions. The 1466's weight distribution placed significant load on the rear axle, but even with this weight transfer, the horsepower often overwhelmed traction. Adding wheel weights or filling tires with calcium chloride solution helped, but these modifications added expense and didn't completely solve the traction problems. Farmers discovered that even with maximum ballast, wheel weights, filled tires, and front-end weights, the 1466 could still break traction violently when pulling heavy implements through challenging soil conditions. The tractor's rear tires would dig into soft ground during wheel spin, creating deep ruts that made recovering control even more difficult, and sometimes left the tractor stuck in its own excavated trenches. Operators pulling chisel plows or heavy discs through wet spring fields reported situations where the 1466's rear wheels would suddenly spin, the tractor would lurch sideways, and the implement would swing dangerously as the tractor lost its intended path. The violent wheel spin created tremendous stress on drivetrain components, accelerating wear on the clutch, transmission, and rear axle that led to premature failures and expensive repairs. The 1466's turbocharged engine delivered its peak torque in a narrow RPM range, and when operators worked within that power band, the sudden torque delivery would break traction before they could modulate the throttle to regain control. Tire technology of the early 1970s hadn't yet developed the aggressive tread patterns and radial construction that would later improve traction, leaving the 1466 trying to transmit massive power through bias ply tires designed for lower horsepower tractors. Farmers working on hillsides experienced the most dangerous traction problems, as wheel spin on slopes could cause the tractor to slide sideways down the hill while still under power, creating runaway situations that ended in rollovers or collisions. The cost of adequate ballast for the 1466 could add over $1,000 to the tractor's purchase price, a significant expense that many farmers delayed or avoided, unknowingly operating their tractors in configurations that maximized traction-related dangers. Some operators resorted to dual rear wheels to spread the power across more tire contact area, but this modification required expensive wheel and tire purchases and created clearance problems with some implements. The 1460's traction problems were severe enough that International Harvester eventually developed front-wheel assist options for later high-horsepower models, acknowledging that two-wheel drive couldn't safely handle the power levels modern turbocharged engines were producing. Rollover accidents involving 1,466 tractors occurred with alarming frequency during the 1970s. The combination of high horsepower, traction limitations, and lack of rollover protection on many units created conditions where experienced operators could find themselves in rollover situations during routine work. The 1466's power made it attractive to farmers needing high horsepower capability. But that same power created risks that operators had to constantly manage. International Harvester eventually addressed some traction issues in later models through improved weight distribution and optional front-wheel assist. But the 1466 remained a tractor that demanded respect and careful operation to avoid the traction-related dangers its power created. Number 7. International Harvester 1206. The 1206 holds a special place in tractor history as International Harvester's first turbocharged production tractor. Introduced in 1965, the 1206 delivered 112 horsepower from a turbocharged six-cylinder diesel engine, representing a significant leap forward in available power for two-wheel drive tractors. The turbocharger provided the power boost that made the 1206 competitive, but it also created operational characteristics that made the tractor unpredictable and dangerous in certain situations. Turbo lag, the delay between throttle input and turbocharger boost response, meant the engine's power delivery wasn't linear or immediately responsive to operator commands. Operators pulling heavy implements would open the throttle expecting immediate power response, but the turbocharger needed time to spool up and develop boost pressure. The delay could last several seconds, during which the engine struggled and the tractor bogged down. Then, suddenly, the turbo would reach operating speed and deliver a surge of power that could cause wheel spin, implement dig-in, or loss of traction. These sudden power surges created dangerous situations. A tractor pulling a plow up a slope might bog down initially, prompting the operator to add more throttle. When the turbo finally spooled up, the sudden power increase could break traction, causing the rear wheels to spin and the tractor to lurch sideways or lose control. Operators not expecting the delayed power surge could find themselves fighting to maintain control as the tractor's behavior suddenly changed. The 1206's power also stressed drivetrain components designed for naturally aspirated engines. Transmissions, clutches, and rear axles experienced failures as the turbocharger's additional power exceeded the durability margins built into the components. These failures sometimes occurred suddenly during operation, creating loss of control situations. International Harvester had essentially installed a turbocharged engine into a drivetrain designed for tractors producing 30 to 40 fewer horsepower, creating a mismatch that guaranteed premature component wear and unexpected failures. Clutches would slip and overheat under the turbo's peak torque, eventually glazing the friction surfaces and losing their ability to transmit power reliably. leaving operators unable to engage gears or control power delivery. The rear axle housing and differential gears experienced cracking and breakage at stress points that had been adequate for naturally aspirated engines, but couldn't withstand the sustained higher loads the turbocharged engine imposed. Transmission gears would strip teeth when the turbo suddenly spooled up and delivered a torque spike that exceeded the gear strength, leaving operators without usable gear ratios in the middle of critical field work. These component failures often required major repairs or complete replacement of expensive drivetrain assemblies, creating repair bills that sometimes approached half the tractor's original purchase price, and left farmers questioning whether the 1206's power advantages justified its reliability problems. Despite its dangers, the 1206 became legendary among IH enthusiasts for its power and capability. Farmers who learned to work with the turbo lag and power characteristics could accomplish impressive work, but the learning curve involved close calls and accidents that gave the 1206 a reputation as a tractor that didn't suffer fools gladly. Number 6. International Harvester 806. The 806, produced from 1963 through 1967, delivered 94 horsepower from a 6-cylinder diesel engine and represented IH's mid-range offering during a period of rapid agricultural mechanization. The tractor was known for strong pulling power and reliable engine performance, but its braking system was dangerously inadequate for the machine's weight and power. The 806 weighed approximately 7,000 pounds, a substantial mass that required effective braking to control safely. But the mechanical drum brakes installed on the 806 were undersized and prone to fading during extended use. The brakes could handle light use on level ground, but sustained braking on hills or when controlling loaded implements revealed the system's dangerous limitations. Brake fade occurred when the drum brakes overheated during prolonged use, reducing friction and dramatically decreasing stopping power. An 806 pulling a loaded wagon down a long hill would experience brake fade as the drums heated up, leaving the operator with diminishing ability to control speed. By the bottom of the hill, the brakes might provide almost no stopping power, creating runaway situations. The weak braking combined with the 806's power created particularly dangerous situations when operators worked on hilly terrain. The tractor had enough power to pull heavy loads up slopes, but controlling those same loads during descent stressed the brakes beyond their capacity. Farmers reported frightening experiences where brakes faded completely, and they had no way to control the tractor's speed except by steering into soft ground or obstacles. International Harvester received numerous complaints about the 806's inadequate brakes, but the company didn't implement significant improvements during the model's production run. The braking problems contributed to accidents serious enough that some insurance companies increased rates for farms operating 806 tractors, recognizing the elevated risk the weak braking system created. Number 5. International Harvester 706. The 706 shared the same production years as the 806, 1963 through 1967, but delivered less power at 73 horsepower from its 6-cylinder diesel engine. Despite the lower horsepower, the 706 developed a reputation for dangerous transmission and rear-end failures that could occur without warning during operation. The transmission in the 706 used a design that proved vulnerable to sudden gear failures under load. Farmers reported gears that would strip teeth and lose engagement while pulling implements, leaving the tractor without power transmission. The sudden loss of drive could cause implements to override the tractor, pushing it forward or allowing it to roll backward on slopes. Rear-end failures in the 706 involved differential and axle components that would break under stress, sometimes catastrophically. A rear-end failure could cause a wheel to lock up or detach, destroying the tractor's stability and often causing rollovers. The failures occurred during normal agricultural work rather than abuse, indicating fundamental design or material problems. The 706's problems appeared related to inadequate component strength for the loads agricultural work imposed. International Harvester had designed the drivetrain components with safety margins that proved insufficient when farmers worked the tractors hard in demanding conditions. The company attempted fixes and component upgrades, but the fundamental design limitations meant the 706 continued experiencing failures throughout its production run. Farmers who experienced transmission or rear-end failures in 706 tractors often sustained significant financial losses from the repair costs and downtime during critical farming periods. Some operators were injured when sudden mechanical failures caused loss of control or rollovers. The 706's reliability problems damaged International Harvester's reputation and drove customers toward competitors who offered more dependable equipment. Number 4. International Harvester 560. The 560 stands as perhaps the most infamous tractor in International Harvester's history. Produced from 1958 through 1963, the 560 delivered 66 horsepower from a 6-cylinder diesel engine and should have been a solid mid-range tractor. Instead, it became a symbol of everything that could go wrong when a manufacturer rushed a problematic design into production. The 560's rear-end failures plagued the model from introduction. The rear axle housing, differential, and related components experienced catastrophic failures at rates that shocked dealers and farmers. Tractors would be working normally when the rear end would suddenly fail, causing wheels to lock, detach, or collapse. These failures occurred during plowing, cultivation, and other normal farm work, not just during abuse or extreme conditions. The mechanical breakdowns caused sudden loss of control that led to rollovers, collisions, and injuries. A rear-end failure on a slope meant the tractor lost stability and often tipped over, sometimes trapping or crushing the operator. Failures during transport on roads caused accidents when rear wheels locked or detached at speed. International Harvester initially denied the severity of the 560's problems, but as failure reports accumulated and dealers faced mounting warranty claims, the company was forced to acknowledge the design flaws. IH implemented a recall and redesign program, attempting to retrofit existing 560 tractors with stronger rear-end components. The recall was expensive and logistically challenging, requiring dealers to essentially rebuild rear ends on thousands of tractors. The 560's problems did lasting damage to International Harvester's reputation. Farmers who had trusted IH for generations felt betrayed by the 560's failures. Competitors used the 560's problems in their marketing, pointing to the recalls and failures as evidence that IH quality had deteriorated. The 560 became shorthand for unreliability, a cautionary tale about what happens when a manufacturer releases a fundamentally flawed product. Number 3. Farmall M. The Farmall M, produced from 1939 through 1952, represented International Harvester's standard-duty row crop tractor for over a decade. The M delivered 38 horsepower from a 4-cylinder gasoline engine and became enormously popular, with production exceeding 250,000 units. But the M's popularity meant its dangerous characteristics affected hundreds of thousands of operators. The M featured heavy, unassisted steering that required significant physical strength to operate. The steering system used a direct mechanical connection from the steering wheel to the front wheels, with no power assist or reduction gearing to multiply the operator's effort. Turning the M at slow speeds, or when stopped, required considerable upper body strength that exhausted operators and reduced their ability to maintain precise control. The braking system on the M was inadequate for the tractor's weight and power. The mechanical drum brakes provided minimal stopping power and faded quickly during sustained use. Operators pulling loaded implements down hills discovered the brakes couldn't control the tractor's speed, creating runaway situations that ended in accidents. The combination of heavy steering and poor brakes proved especially dangerous on hillsides. Operators working on slopes needed to steer constantly to maintain position and control direction, but the heavy steering fatigued them quickly. When they needed to brake to control speed, the weak brakes often proved inadequate. The result was a tractor that was difficult to control precisely in the conditions where precise control mattered most. Operators often lost control of Farmall M tractors on hills, leading to rollovers that killed or injured hundreds of farmers during the model's long production run. The M lacked rollover protection, so when it tipped, operators had no structural protection. The tractor's popularity meant these accidents occurred frequently enough to make the M one of the most dangerous tractors in terms of total accidents and injuries, even though the design flaws were shared by most tractors of the era. Number 2. Farmall H. The Farmall H, produced from 1939 through 1953, delivered 26 horsepower from a 4-cylinder gasoline engine and became International Harvester's best-selling tractor model. Over 390,000 Farmall H tractors were produced, making it ubiquitous on American farms during the 1940s and early 1950s. The H's enormous popularity meant its dangerous instability affected more operators than perhaps any other single tractor model. The H used a narrow tricycle front end, two closely spaced front wheels on a single pivot. That provided excellent maneuverability between crop rows, but created dangerous instability on slopes and uneven terrain. The narrow front end offered minimal resistance to tipping forces. When operating on side slopes, the H would tip over with minimal warning, often giving operators no time to react or jump clear. The tricycle configuration meant the tractor balanced on three relatively narrow contact points, creating a geometry that was inherently less stable than wide front tractors with four widely spaced wheels. Hundreds of farmers died in Farmall H rollover accidents during the model's production years, and the decades that followed as used, H tractors continued working on farms. The accidents followed predictable patterns, working on slopes, turning with implements attached, hitting obstacles that caused sudden weight shifts. The H's lack of rollover protection meant operators crushed beneath the tipping tractor had almost no chance of survival. The H's reputation as a dangerous tractor developed slowly because its popularity and general reliability meant farmers accepted the rollover risk as normal rather than unacceptable. It wasn't until the 1960s and 70s, when rollover protection became available and safety advocates began documenting tractor accident statistics, that the full scope of the H's danger became clear. By then, hundreds of operators had died in accidents that rollover protection structures could have prevented. Number 1. Farmall Regular. The Farmall Regular earns the top position on our list, not because it was the most poorly designed tractor, but because it established the dangerous narrow tricycle front-end configuration that would plague international harvester tractors for decades. Introduced in 1924 and produced through 1932, the Farmall Regular delivered approximately 20 horsepower from a four-cylinder gasoline engine and pioneered the row crop tractor concept. International Harvester designed the Farmall Regular specifically for cultivating row crops like corn and cotton, where the tractor needed to navigate between narrow rows without damaging plants. The solution was a narrow tricycle front end with two closely spaced wheels that fit between rows, providing maneuverability that conventional tractors with wide front axles couldn't match. The narrow front end revolutionized row crop farming, but it created instability that made the Farmall Regular prone to rollovers in any situation involving slopes, uneven ground, or sudden weight shifts. The geometry of three narrow contact points, two front wheels close together and two rear wheels spaced wider, created a tractor that could tip over with minimal provocation. Early Farmall Regular tractors lacked any form of rollover protection. No cab, no frame, no structure existed to protect the operator when the tractor tipped. Rollover accidents were often fatal, as the tractor's weight crushed operators who couldn't escape quickly enough or who were pinned beneath the machine. The Farmall Regular's narrow front end became the template for international harvesters' row crop tractors for the next 40 years. The Farmall F20, F30, H, M, and numerous other models all used variations of the narrow tricycle configuration, perpetuating the instability and rollover danger that the original Farmall Regular had introduced. Thousands of farmers died in rollover accidents involving IH tractors with narrow front ends, a tragic legacy that traced directly back to the design decisions made when the Farmall Regular was developed in the early 1920s. The Farmall Regular's historical importance as the first successful row crop tractor is undeniable. It transformed American agriculture by enabling efficient cultivation of row crops and helped establish International Harvester as the dominant agricultural equipment manufacturer of the 1920s and 30s. But the design choice that made the Farmall Regular successful, the narrow tricycle front end, also made it and its descendants dangerously unstable, creating a safety legacy that would haunt International Harvester for generations. These 12 tractors represented power, innovation, and progress in American agriculture, but they also carried design flaws and engineering compromises that cost lives and taught painful lessons about the importance of operator safety. International Harvester built legendary machines that helped feed America and the world, but the company's history includes these dangerous models that remind us innovation without adequate attention to safety can create tragedy alongside progress. The legacy of these tractors lives on in the safety regulations, rollover protection requirements, and engineering standards that make modern tractors far safer than the machines our fathers and grandfathers operated.